Hello all, I'm Sai and in today's video I'm bringing to you my September reading wrap up. I know that this video is very late into the month. I wanted to make it in the first week of October itself, but I got very busy because of Navaratri and all other such things. Physically also I have not been feeling that great, so please excuse me for this late wrap up. I managed reading a total of 11 books in September and I can say that it was not that great, at the same time not too bad for me. It was kind of a normal reading month and I think my reading will be a bit more chill for the rest of the year because I am feeling quite stressed out and spread out too. So yeah, without any further ado, let's get into the books right away. We'll start with the physical books as usual. So the first book which I finished reading in September is a very short book. It's kind of a novella because it's just under 200 pages long and it is An Island by Karen Jennings. This book was also longlisted for the Booker Prize in 2021. That's the reason why I went forward and bought this book. I tried reading it sometime during the beginning of this year, but after getting through like 20 to 30% of the book, I was not that much hooked. So I DNF'd it back then. I just wanted to give it another try in the beginning of September, and I should say that it was quite easy and flowing for me to read during that time. Here we follow this man who has been living on this island for like a huge part of his life, and what all he is doing in the island, who the island belonged to, why he is there, and all his backstory too. It talks so much about colonialism, racism, and solitude as a whole. For quite a short book, I can say that the author has packed a lot of things which will definitely touch our heart. It was quite grueling to read some scenes inside the book because they were a bit too brutal for my taste, and I ended up rating this book 4 out of 5 stars. Next we have an adult standalone Indian fantasy book, and this book was quite high in expectations for me, and I should say that it met almost all of them. And the book is The Yogi Witch by Zorian Cross. I just published a review for this book in the channel. I think it was the video before this one, so please do check it out. It will also be linked in the description if you want to watch it. Now in this book, we follow our main character Jay Gill in his early 20s and what all is happening in his life. He's basically a yogi as well as a witch. He's a yogi by day and he's a witch because he is born into a family of witches. The entirety of the story happens in Delhi, and what all Jay is going through in this small chunk of his life is the plot of the book. We also get to know so much more about the main character and his life through the way in which the story has been narrated to us. It is narrated in a then and now kind of style. The main plot of the story actually goes on in the now part of the narration, and the then part is used to show us why this now part of the story is happening. The world building in this one was really nice, and I also did have some issues with this book, all of which I have discussed in that video. But if you're looking to read some good quality Indian fantasy book, I'd highly suggest you to try this one because the author does have a lot of knowledge about what all he is discussing inside the book, and everything that he tried to convey and represent in the book were very well done. And I'm also sure if the author is going to publish any more books in the future, I'll definitely be reading them. I rated this one 3.5 out of 5 stars. The next one is a short non-fiction book, and I've also not heard about this book from anyone at all. I bought this book during one of the Lock the Box sales as a filler book as usual, and it is The Big Butts of Life by Rick Butts. The butts in the title of the book actually just means the butt that we use to pair up with any reason that we come up with for not doing certain kind of stuff which are difficult for us. Here the author discusses about why we make excuses in life to achieve the things that we want to most achieve in our lives, and also how we can push ourselves further and forward in order to achieve our goals by moving across all those excuses. Now this is a book which is not light in its tone at all. The author is just telling everything on the face, and if you're a beginner who has not read that many self-help books, I'd highly suggest you to go forward and try this one. It's very short. It'll hardly take like an hour or two to finish reading this book, and I can say that it was quite motivating for me because I was very down while I was reading this book, and I was not able to put it down because to each and every chapter I was moving forward with, the author just made the book better and better. It is also not positive in a toxic way. I think the book is not popular just because the author is not popular, but if you're looking forward to read some good quality self-help book, I'd highly suggest you to try this one since non-fiction November is also around the corner. I rated this one also 4 out of 5 stars. The next one is the first book inside an adult fantasy trilogy, and it is also super popular. The book is The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. Now this book was just as good as I expected it to be, but I also had some issues with the book because since it's the first book of the author, I think it was not edited that great. The writing of her is just as impeccable in any of her other books too, and this one felt a lot more easier for me to read compared to Babel because that had a lot of different terminology that I've not read as usually in any of the other books that I usually read. But in this one it was not like that. The story was huge and massive in scope, the characters were great. The main character here is someone whom you'll either end up loving so much or also hating because she feels so much real like a person. She's not totally good at all, but she has some really despicable qualities too. While reaching the end of this book only, I was able to understand why this first book in the series compared to the entire series as a whole is so popular in the internet, because once you reach the end of the story, you will definitely have a moral dilemma of what is happening right now in the story and how the story is going to progress on with what has happened right now is good or bad. I've still not started reading the second book, but my plan is to finish it by the end of the year. Let's wait and see. It is quite heavy in its themes also, and I can say that it was a bit stretched out for my taste, especially the middle portion of the book felt a bit too long than necessary, so I ended up rating this one 4 out of 5 stars again. Next we have the book club pick for September, and it is Everything Under by Daisy Johnson. This book has been sitting on my shelf for over 3 years now, and that's the only reason why I wanted to read it for my book club. Even though the book was good and the story as such was really nice, I am not a huge fan of this book because it did not make me feel anything strong at all in particular. The representation inside the book is great. It is literary fiction, so it's a bit difficult to read. So if you're a beginner, I'd not suggest you to go forward and read this. And I also feel a bit bad for selecting this for my book club because I know it is not beginner friendly, and I usually tend to pick books which are beginner friendly for my book club reads. In this book, we follow our main character Gretel, who's this person that makes up dictionaries and stuff. So she usually puts up words together, and she has also not had a good childhood because she has been grown as a single child by a single parent, and her mother also has not been that great as a parent, if you ask me, from all that is going on inside the story. It also dives a little bit into the magical realism genre of fiction, which it touches here and there, and even towards the end of the story you are able to see the elements that the author is trying to interview together so that, you know, more than one genre is blended into the story. As a story, it was nice, but it is not something that I liked. The writing of the author was good and it was not confusing, so I rated this one 3.5 out of 5 stars. Next we have another non-fiction book, and it is also by one of my favorite authors. The book is Love a Little Stronger by Preeti Shenoy, which is a collection of 36 incidents from the author's own life, and it is really beautiful. Okay, if you want a light-hearted read which will be very easy to just read through over a weekend and just feel comfortable and happy, you need to pick up this book. The author just talks about different things that have happened in her life in the form of short stories or such, and each and every one of them is very realistic because they have happened in the author's life. I had one tiny little problem alone with this book. It's also not like, the problem of the book, but a problem that I had. The author has been a daughter, a sister, a wife, a mother, and also an author. But what happened is, a little bit after the 60% mark of the book just became to tell stories or incidents about Preeti Shenoy as a mother alone. It took like a huge chunk of the book. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, but I wanted to know a lot more about the other aspects of her life too. The writing is super easy, guys, so if you're a beginner, just go forward and read it. And trust me, once you finish reading this book, you'll want to read more books, and you'll especially want to read more books by this author, just like I am right now. It is easily my most favorite book from September, and I ended up rating it 4.5 out of 5 stars. The last physical book in this wrap-up is actually the first book inside a series, but third book as a whole, and it is Blood of Elves by Andrez Sapkowski, which is the first main book inside the Witcher series. But we have to read 2 short story collections before getting to this book. I read both of them the first half of the year, and I read this in September. It was really good for the weather that we had here in Chennai during September, because the story is really visual. Okay, the author is exactly necessarily descriptive in order to show us the character, show us the place, and make us feel how these people are feeling here in the weather that is there in that part of the story right now. So basically what happens in the first main book inside the series is all our 3 main characters get to spend some time with each other, and for most part of the story we see Geralt and Ciri being together. We also get to see a chunk of the story during which Ciri and Yennefer are together, and that was quite confusing to me because the timeline is not linear. Okay, it just keeps on changing here and then. And after finishing the book, I wanted to go back and read the summary online. Only after reading the summary, I was able to understand, okay, these things have happened here and here, and all of them have been narrated in a different way for us. I think it will be continuing on in the same way for the rest of the series too. There are 5 more books inside the series. 4 are full-length novels, and the other one, the last one, is a short story collection. I want to finish reading this one also by the end of the year, but I highly doubt it. But this one was so much fun to read, and I ended up rating this one also 4 stars. Moving on to the audiobooks, I wanted to listen to a few non-fiction audiobooks, and of these, the first one is a spiritual book, and it is Reiki for Dummies, 2nd edition by Nina L. Paul and Leslie Howard. I'm specifically saying the 2nd edition because it's the latest one, and that's the one which I read. And if you're someone who's planning to learn Reiki, or if you're planning to practice Reiki as a profession, I'd suggest you to go forward and give this book a read because it was very comprehensive in its tone. I'm planning to start Reiki healing as a professional in the near future, so I wanted to gain some knowledge knowledge about what all I can do and what all I should not do. So I went forward and read this book. It was also kind of like a small revision for myself on all the things that I've read through my courses. Even if you're like an utter beginner who does not know what Reiki is but wants to know about it, you can definitely go forward and read this book. It's a bit big, okay? I think the audiobook ran for like 12 to 14 hours, but none of it was wasted at all because the author just explains each and everything in the most easy form possible. So even if you're a beginner, you can definitely go forward and read this book because it covers what Reiki is, what you can do with it, what you cannot do with it, what it is, what it is not, and what are all the different ways in which you can use it creatively using certain examples. I definitely loved it and will suggest it to anyone who wants to know more about Reiki, and I ended up rating this one also 4 out of 5 stars. The next book is How to Be Your Own Therapist by Owen O'Kane. This book is written by a therapist and he's been practicing therapy as a profession for like 2 decades or so before reading this book. The author says that he got into therapy when he was 25 years old because he wanted some help with dealing with his sexuality and coming out. And from there, how his journey as a therapist as well as therapizing himself started and how he made his life better. Now, this book is not a quick fix book at all, okay? It just teaches you how you can keep your mental health in check and, not spiral into anything that will end up costing a lot from your life. You can learn a lot of techniques that therapists themselves use with their patients and clients in order to help them with certain ailments or situations, and you can also try and incorporate them in your daily life as habits so that you can improve your mental health gradually. This is not like a switch turned on and you just get all better all of a sudden. It's not a book like that. So if you're expecting something like it, don't read it and waste your time. I'd say don't read any book with that mindset because you will end up wasting your time only. But if you're ready to learn stuff and put in some effort, I'd highly suggest you to try this one. It's also not a replacement for therapy in any way. It's just like, a toolkit provided to you that you can use in times of need. Again, this was quite easy to read and, practice as well. So I rated this one also 4 out of 5 stars. The last audiobook is a short story and it is Poker Face by Preeti Shenoy again. And I can say that of all the Preeti Shenoy books or stories that I've read so far, this is my least favorite because I did not see a point in the story at all. Even though it had her similar kind of writing style, I think it was a bit too darker in its tone. I'm sorry, I just bumped into the mic. Yeah, even though the story was, very much similar to everything that she has written before in the tone, I think it was much more darker and, hopeless as such. And I've read like 2 or 3 other short stories by her before this one, and all of them have the same kind of vibe. All of them had some kind of relationship going on, or, the main character had some depth to them. But here it did not feel like the main character had any depth at all, and everything that happened just kind of happened. It did not have like any rhyme or reason, and the whole story just felt so flat to me. So I ended up rating it somewhere around 2.5 to 3 stars, and I'd not suggest anyone to read this as their first Preeti Shenoy book because she writes like 10 to 20 times better than this. So if you have read some other Preeti Shenoy books and want to try something different by her, you can go forward and try this. Otherwise, I'd say you need not try it because it ended up disappointing me a lot, and it might disappoint others too who are a fan of her writing. So yeah, make of that what you will. Finally, talking about the one ebook which I finished reading in September. I think I read this throughout the entire month for like 10 to 15 minutes before bed each and every day. And this book is My Hanuman Chalisa by Devdutt Pattanaik. It's an Indian mythology book in which the author talks about his understanding of the Hanuman Chalisa. I listen to the Hanuman Chalisa almost each and every day in the morning, and it just makes you feel so energized and protected. The author just explains each and every one of the 40 verses inside the Hanuman Chalisa and his own interpretation of it. It was really nice to read, and if you're someone who has just listened to the Hanuman Chalisa but does not understand the meaning of it because it is not in a language that you know, like it was for me, I think this book will be very highly helpful. The author gives both a literal explanation of the verses as well as an in-depth philosophical and intellectual explanation of each and every one of the 40 verses. And he clearly says that this is only his interpretation of the work and not just the only one out there. I've started with this one, and I should say that I gained a lot of knowledge after reading it. So if you're someone who's interested in Indian mythology, specifically Hindu mythology, I'd suggest you to give this a try, and I rated this one also 4 stars. So yes guys, those are all the 11 books which I finished reading in September, and it was quite a decent reading month for me. I can say that October is going a lot better compared to September, and I hope to finish at least a bit more books by the end of the month. Don't forget to let me know your September wrap up in the comments below because I'd like to know what you have read, and if you also have some recommendations for me, please do let me know them. If you did enjoy watching today's video and found it helpful, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. And if you want to get more content from me, do subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching and have a great rest of your day.